You don't look Jewish. Growing up in Orange County with blonde hair and blue eyes, this was a common refrain. You don't look Jewish. And as an 11 or 12-year-old, I didn't know how to respond to my non-Jewish peers. 30 years later, I realized when someone said to me, "You don't look Jewish," they weren't trying to just state a fact. I think they were trying to offer me a compliment. Because I should have responded with the following: well, what does it mean to look Jewish? Because I have the blessing of being a rabbi here in this congregation at Sinai Temple, where being a Jew looks very different depending on with whom you're speaking. Light skin, dark skin, blue eyes, red hair, brown hair. Come to Sinai Temple on a Shabbat morning, and you will quickly find out that while we look very different, while our customs may differ, while our traditions and observance levels run on a continuum, each of us is a Jew in our very own right, and for that, we should be proud. I bring this up because of Dara Horn's article in The Atlantic this week, titled, "Why the Most Educated People in America Fall for Anti-Semitic Lies." I encourage you to read the piece after Shabbat, but the premise is the following. Anti-Semitism is systemic. For thousands of years, it has been the elite, the professors, the priests, the scholars, the professional debaters who have manipulated the greater world to believe that Jews represent evil. Moreover, it's been this very people who have brainwashed the greater population to believe that we do not have a right to exist. In public forums throughout history, Jews were and are considered the nemesis, the enemy. Dara Horn cites historian David Nirenberg, who published a book in 2013 called Anti-Judaism. About Nirenberg, Horn writes, "When one reads through his carefully assembled record of 23 centuries worth of intellectual leaders articulating their society's ideals by loudly rejecting whatever they considered Jewish, this deep neural groove in Western thought becomes difficult to dismiss, its patterns unmistakable." And he gives several examples. If capitalism was evil, then Jews were capitalists. If communism was evil, then Jews were communists. Anti-Judaism, Horn explains, thus becomes a righteous fight to promote justice. And the historian Nirenberg teaches, anti-Judaism should not be understood as some archaic or irrational closet in the vast edifices of Western thought. It was rather one of the basic tools with which that edifice was constructed. In other words, today, 2024, whether it's on the college campus, during a rally on our streets, or on social media, we clearly see history repeating itself. Because anti-Semitism breeds and festers as an ingrained, pervasive infection that has existed in our most elite institutions and forums for thousands of years. Now, you have heard your rabbis stand on this bima, reminding, pleading, preaching that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That's as clear as day. Attacks on Israel, attacks on the Jewish state, gives permission for anti-Semitism to crawl out of the corner from which it lurks, because anti-Semitism is always there. But this morning, I want us to open up our eyes to something else. Because even though anti-Semitism is rising beyond belief According to the ADL, almost 400% since October 7th. In the world of the oppressed, anti-Jewish actions aren't seen as truly unjust. When Jews are othered, when someone says, "He Jewed me down," meaning Jews are cheap. When someone says, "The Jews drink the blood of Jesus." When someone says, "You don't look Jewish because Jews have big noses." When Jews are called Nazis both online and to our faces, we must name it for what it is because no one else seems willing to do it. Antisemitism is racism. This is the first point I want to leave you with this morning. Antisemitism, even if a minority looks outwardly educated, successful, resilient, antisemitism is another form of racist behavior. We fight the systemic lie of antisemitism by calling out antisemitism every single time. You can be educated and wealthy and accomplished and still suffer from Jew hate. Every other minority, every other oppressed population is included in DEI trainings or modules. We must insist, whether it's at a university setting or professional institution, if Jews are not seen as a discriminated people, then we, the Jewish people, will continue to be targeted as the ones who are never truly in distress. In 2021, David Badiel wrote the book, Jews Don't Count. And he explains that because Jews can seemingly hide, because we can pass as non-Jews, there's an assumption that racism is different, that the racism is lessened. He writes, this would suggest that Jews don't really suffer for being thought of as different, as long as people don't know that they're Jews. In other words, we won't suffer racist behavior as long as we don't admit that we're Jewish, as long as we hide. Now, many of you might be thinking, but Rabbi, we're not exactly a race. But David Badiel explains that we must put ourselves in the minds of the anti-Semites. He says to fight anti-Semitism, you have to be aware of how the anti-Semites see your Jewishness, which is a thing of your blood and not of your spiritual soul. Now, make no doubt about it. This isn't a competition. Who really wants to win the title for most hated? But the Jewish people have been fighting an uphill battle against history. But we won't stay silent, and we won't stay invisible any longer. Perhaps there was a time in which American Jews thought assimilation was the key to acceptance in Western society. But we have learned the hard way. Anti-Semitism isn't going away. Not on the right, not on the left. Dara Horn was astonished by her recent observations on the college campus. She writes, at a Shabbat dinner I attended at one college, students were sitting around the table sharing what they wished they could say to their non-Jewish friends. I wish I could say, I want to spend a semester in Israel. I wish I could say I work at a Jewish preschool. I wish I could say that I volunteer at a Jewish hospital. She writes, I sat at the table stupefied. They were in hiding. Now, there's a woman in our tradition who at first thought hiding or assimilation was her entryway into rising among royalty. In the Purim story, Esther is cautioned, at first to hide her Jewish identity, to keep it to herself. And yet in a story where everything is turned upside down, it's only when she outs herself as a Jew does the story turn from one of a potential massacre to Jews claiming victory. And when she hesitates, To admit her Jewish identity, Mordecai reminds her, do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. And who knows, perhaps you have attained this royal position for a moment like this. I forgot to mention at the beginning that one of the reasons why my non-Jewish peers would comment on how I look is because I was always involved in Jewish life. Big surprise. My parents were involved in our synagogue. I attended USY events. I spent my bat mitzvah money on a 6-week trip to Israel. And my non-Jewish, and even sometimes my Jewish friends would comment, wow, you are so Jewish. Again, not meant as a compliment. But today, here's what I would have said. I am so Jewish. And yes, this is what a Jew looks like. This is what a Jew acts like and sounds like. Isn't it great? And whether you keep Shabbat, whether you attend services twice or 3 times a year, whether or not you even step into a synagogue, the world needs to hear, the world needs to see the Jewish masses through the different ways we practice, through the different ways we look, publicly proclaiming, as you heard this morning from Dr. Raviv, I am a Jew. And so Jews around the world, in whichever way you express your Judaism, hide no more. Because perhaps we, the Jewish people, have risen to a time in history for a moment like this, a time in which we proudly explore and publicly honor our Jewish identity, a reclamation of the word Jew, not a word used to denigrate, but used as a word to self-celebrate. Could it be that our own reclamation of the word Jew is a step forward towards dismantling antisemitism? And so this is a call out there to anyone listening, because I don't want to preach to the choir. You're all here. But anyone out there, or please spread this message. We need you today to publicly and positively self-identify as a Jew. How can we begin to ask others to respect who we are if we aren't willing to reveal who we are? Respect begins with us. The Ner Tamid, the eternal light, it stands in every sanctuary around the world. It's a reminder of the light that was lit in the Mishkan and later in the temples in Jerusalem, an eternal light that serves as a reminder to the Jewish people, we are an or legoyim, we are a light unto the nations. This is who we are, and our mantra must be clear. I am a Jew, and I'm not going anywhere. Because all of us,